Okay, hey everyone. I just wanted to make a quick video about data visualizations from our playtest forums. So if you go to office.com and log in with your Columbia credentials, you'll wind up here, or you could always, from your email, you can click this thing in the top and click whatever Office option you're looking for. There's two that are relevant to us for this: Forms and Excel. So let's start with Forms, and I'm going to assume hopefully you had a chance to make your map feedback form. Here's one I made just for testing. I will use it in the future to help classes understand what I'm looking for with this. But you know, the takeaway was we were meant to make things ranked 1 to 10 so that we can compare the responses from each playtest and get a good idea of how our changes to our map are affecting the playtest data that we get. And in theory, you know, we can see if things are trending in the right direction. So that's the hope. So here I just have two copies of the same form, but I've dated them so it's clear like which test they're from. And this is so that we can kind of keep the results from each playtest distinct. And it's going to be important to give them good names so you understand which one's which, but also that they have the same questions. Otherwise, you're comparing apples to oranges, and that's not what we're looking for either. So I understand in this first go if we didn't come up with absolute best questions, but that's something we can learn from, and then, you know, when we make our single player maps, we'll do an even better job with this, and we'll work on getting more tests in. So I've just quickly shared this with myself and answered 3 responses of just me clicking through the forum as fast as I could just for the sake of this demonstration. So on the most basic level, when I say that it would be good to add a visualization to your process journal, that means you would click on responses here, and you could simply, for each item, you could simply share something like this. So I could take a screenshot of this, and just this illustration of the stars is a simple visualization that I think kind of makes sense for this particular item. You know, ideally, we might have more responses. If you want to show just this part, I suppose this is the main visualization that's relevant here. But I guess it's also good that it shows the question involved. So for your first playtest, when you have no other data sets to compare with, this is good enough for a visualization. You can just share how this turned out for each question. And maybe it's a good idea to like just make like kind of one thumbnail for this. So I could just take this one overall image and then add it on my process journal as an image with a link to this. I think I can generate this as a PDF or something here. So I could then have that one thumbnail link out to this big whole complete data set, so I don't have to make this giant 3-page thing that is gonna, you know, clutter up my process journal. So I want the one thumbnail image just to help add some visual interest and quickly let readers identify what they're looking at. But then I would probably have it link out to the full data like this, so that you don't have to clutter up your process journal. I guess another thing you could do, rather than make that PDF, it looks like you can get a summary link. And you would just want to make sure you tested this in an incognito window so that you can see if it works for folks outside of our organization, because, you know, people reviewing your portfolio probably aren't going to be working at Columbia, so you need to make sure your link is accessible to people outside of the organization. And so this looks like it would work too, Only risk being, I don't know how long this lasts for student accounts, so it might be smart to make the PDF, because that will last forever and it's in your sole possession. And this is really convenient, but it exists on a server that we don't have control or ownership over. So those are the pros and cons of each approach. Now, let's say now I've got my second playtest done. So I now have responses from each playtest, right? So for my second playtest entry in my process journal, when I say create a visualization, what's going to be most useful this time would maybe be a comparison of how the answers and data evolved from this earlier playtest to this later playtest. And so the way I think I would handle that would be by going back to Office and creating an Excel workbook here. So I'll just make a new blank workbook. And I'm not an Excel expert, but there's a pretty easy way we can do this. And there's probably an easier way you could do it if you really knew the app inside and out, which is not a bad thing. So don't, I'm sure you could get on LinkedIn Learning and become an Excel wizard, and that would be useful to you. But I'm just going to show you a quick and easy way to do it. So let's say I want to see how this particular question changed over time. So this is my older playtest. I'm going to go back to my Excel doc here, and I'm going to make essentially like a column for each playtest. So we'll say playtest 1 and playtest 2. And maybe if I were doing a better job, I'd want to put the dates in here, but I'm just not going to bother right now for this example. And then I would want to know each question. So I think I can just triple click this line and then copy it and go back to my Excel, and I'm going to paste in the question there, and I'm going to widen this row. I don't know why it's so tall, to be honest. There we go. So now I have the question there. And let's say I wanted to do another question. I could copy another question too. But I think this might be useful to do one at a time, just because you'll see how the chart is going to look in a second. So the first play test, the rating was 7 on average. So I'm going to type that in, 7. The second play test, the rating was 9.67 on average. So let's go back and put that one in. And so this is our data that we need. So I'm going to select that data. Here's the question. Here's the first play test and the score, the second play test and the score, the average of all of my responses. And then you can click on Insert. And while you have this selected, go to Recommended Charts. And I'm going to choose this line graph. I think this is the best way to compare these. So I'll hit Insert Chart, and I get the little chart. And I'm going to spruce it up just a little. I'm going to right click on it and hit Format, I think is how you do this. And so for chart title, I don't really want this by field 1. I think that's what this is. What I'm going to do is just change the field title to get rid of the by field 1 part. The rest I think is good. Or you could put whatever you think. You could just summarize it as overall enjoyment or something, whatever makes sense to you. Then I want to get rid of where it says field 1 down here, because I don't think that makes any sense. So I'm going to go down to the horizontal axis option here under chart titles. I think it's still under chart title. No, it's its own thing, I guess. And I want to look for what it's labeled, axis title. And I just want to clear out field 1. So I think once I do that, then that thing down there will go away. And we may not really need a label for the Y here either. And I probably want to stop the numbers at 10 because you can't get over 10 in this. So I'm going to go to the vertical axis. I'm going to change the maximum to 10, and then Yeah, I don't think it really makes sense to duplicate this info here, and like 1 to 10 as a score is pretty self-explanatory, I think. So I would either type in rating or something like that there. Let's see. Where's the label for this? Axis title. Yeah, so let's just type in rating. And this looks pretty good now. So this would be the visualization. You could see from playtest 1 to playtest 2, I improved. And that's a cool thing to show. And so obviously the more playtests you have, the more interesting this data is. And you can see like more useful of a trend, but this is the general idea. So then what I could do, I'm sure you can you could copy this or take a screenshot of it, or I bet there's some other fancier way to export it, but you need to get this as an image file. So, if you don't know, I use this app called GreenShot to take screenshots. It's really nice and easy, but there's also always like the Windows snipping tool to take a screenshot. So you should definitely have that on your computer, which is a way you could select this image, or you can copy it and paste it somewhere. That's another way to get it as an image file, and then you can put this image in your process journal. Now, you maybe don't need to do every single data point. Maybe just do the ones you want to share. Your process journal should be kind of like a highlights feed. So if you get it too long and too comprehensive, it'll lose its value and people will maybe not see everything that's there. Like, each time you add something, it reduces the odds of someone seeing all the other stuff. So keep it as like a streamlined highlights kind of concept. And then if you want to provide links to the rest of the data, that could be useful. All right, so I'm going to stop this here, and hopefully you all have a good idea of how to create these data visualizations for your process journal.